Kyle here. Today, I wanted to take a look at some PlayStation 1 games in my collection, and I picked out 5 games I think belong in anybody's PlayStation 1 collection. Got 5 games right here. We're going to start it off with a classic, the venerable Crash Bandicoot. This is Crash Bandicoot 3 Warped. I think we all saw this one coming. Of course, if we're doing a PlayStation games list, and especially if I'm going to include a 3D platformer, we got to talk Crash Bandicoot. Even though there are definitely other 3D platformers I do want to cover, we had to talk about this franchise because Sony pushed it really hard when the PlayStation dropped. It was an early flagship title for them in 1996. You know, the console released in 95. So this was really one of their first big pushes, one of their early mascots for the system, really. And while the first game, I think, hasn't aged incredibly well, I can still go back and play it and have a good time. But I do definitely think there are some deficiencies in that first game, and you gotta cut them some slack. You know, Naughty Dog coming out of the gate swinging in 1996, I think they did a damn good job. But I think if we're talking what deserves to be in a collection, I either got to give it to Crash 2 or 3, and this was a bit of a hard decision for me. I do think Cortex Strikes Back is really great, but personally, I got to give it to Warped. I really enjoy this game a lot. I have so much fun playing this game, and you can tell the devs also just had a ton of fun making it. There is so much variety in this game, and it's amazing how much of it actually lands. Like, you would think for all the things that they try to accomplish in this game, that more of it would not necessarily hit the mark, and so much of it does. Honestly, every time I play it, it just impresses me how much they got right with this one. I definitely think if you're looking for a 3D platformer on the PS1, and you somehow haven't played this one, definitely give it a shot. This would be my recommendation. Next up, we've got a lovely minigame compilation that I think deserves a whole lot more love, and that is Incredible Crisis. Now, if you love zany, wacky, absurdist, incredibly Japanese, in all the best kind of ways video games, Incredible Crisis is one for you. This is a minigame compilation. You follow 4 members of a working class Japanese family as they go through an insanely absurd day trying to get home to their poor old grandma so they can throw her a wonderful birthday party. It's a very heartwarming game despite all the craziness that goes on. You get 24 mini games. These games cover a ton of ground, anywhere from rhythm game to button masher to sports, snowboarding, balancing act, anything. You name it, it's got it, and it does it pretty well. It's really fun time. The soundtrack is great. It's very ska inspired. I can't recommend this game enough. Now, it is published by Titus in America, and I know a bunch of people just shuddered, but they deserve credit for bringing this over. I am so glad that we got this game here. You know, did I think it was going to be the Superman 64 publishers to bring it over? No, but I'm glad they did. Keeping right along, we've got a bit of a gem in the racing and car combat genre with Ray Tracers. Now, this game is probably going to look very familiar to some that have played Taito's earlier works. This was published by THQ in America, but Taito did develop this game, and you can tell because it plays very similar to their Chase HQ games, which I also highly recommend. This is essentially Chase HQ in 3D in all but the name. It pretty much is the same style of gameplay. You have a mix of racing and car combat elements. Essentially how it works is you start a stage, you race through the stage against the clock. Once you reach a certain point in the stage, a boss appears, and you take down that boss by ramming it with the benefit of your nitro. Super fun gameplay loop. It is very short. I believe there are only 6 stages in this game. It's not going to take you very long, especially on even the default difficulty. But hard mode does give you a bit of an extra challenge. Just know in advance that it is pretty short, especially considering the price of entry for this game, but I do think ultimately it's worth it. I have replayed this game many times over the years that I've owned it, and I definitely think it's worthy of a spot in your collection. And no PS1 fighting game collection is complete without some Tekken 3 by Namco. If you're gonna choose one 3D fighting game for the PlayStation 1, I'm sorry, Tekken 3's gotta be it. And I've played a lot of 3D fighting games, a lot of which I've really, really liked, many which we'll probably cover in future videos. But if I have to choose one, if we're like on a desert island situation, Tekken 3's getting my vote. Just the absolute fluidity of the combat, the character roster, the amount of available game modes. It's just clear Namco was at their peak, and they were absolutely crushing it. This game holds up. It stands the test of time all these years later. An absolute high watermark for not only the PlayStation 1, but for fighting games in general. I really think this game Deserves all the praise it gets and then some. And lastly, to round us out here with a rhythm game, actually, is Jammer Lammy. Now, guys, I know I'm making a bit of a bold play putting Jammer Lammy here instead of Parappa the Rapper, but I do firmly believe this is by the same devs, by the way. It is a rhythm game, much in the same vein as Parappa. I do think this is the better game. I think it's just tighter in terms of the actual rhythm gameplay controls. Not only that, but there is vastly more content than the original Parappa had. Parappa himself is playable in this game as well, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. I also really love Lammy as a character, and I think the plot they interweave throughout this is fantastic. And ultimately, which one you like, I think is really going to be subjective, because let's face it, the gameplay is pretty much the same. It's going to come down to the songs you enjoy and how the plot interweaves into the story of this. And I gotta give it to Lammy, if I'm being honest, as much as I love Parappa. Well, guys, those were my 5 picks for today. I have many, many more PlayStation games, as you can probably tell behind me. This is just a small part of the collection. I do definitely want to do some more of these videos, not only best and most worthwhile games, but maybe also some not so worthwhile ones. Let me know if you liked this video. Did I forget anything? Trust me, I definitely did. With over 1,300 games, even in the US library alone. Couldn't cover everything, but we'll definitely be making our way through them as we do more of these videos. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and have a good one. And no PS1 fighting game collection is complete without some Verticom